Good evening and welcome to our January 7th, 2026 Board of Douglas County Commissioners 5:30 business meeting. Paper copies of the agenda are available for those here in person, and the full packet is available on our website. Reviewing our agenda, first we'll consider our consent agenda. There are 9 items on that agenda. After our consent agenda, we'll have general public comment. We welcome general public comment for addressing issues not on today's agenda, but otherwise related to county business. Given our limited time and the need to have an orderly and efficient meeting, we apply certain rules regarding public comments. We'll do our best to enforce these rules consistently and without regard to the point of view expressed by the speaker. Here are the rules. 1, each speaker will be limited. Let me start that again. Each speaker will be limited to a total of 3 minutes of speaking time. However, we will accept public comment of any length in writing. Individual speakers may not donate unused time to other speakers. 3, all comments must address topics within the jurisdiction of the County Commission. And 4, we reserve the right to mute or remove any speaker whose comments are threatening, aggressively hostile, or belligerent. Campaigning for public office during the public comment period is not allowed. We invite you to give your full name and address for our meeting minutes and address your comments to the Commission. While not required, it does provide us context on the item, and we can assist if we need to respond later. Please also know that comments received by the Commission during our meetings do not necessarily represent the views of Douglas County government, but we value the input. We don't usually respond to general public comments on the spot, but if you leave your contact information with county staff, we'll try and get specific questions answered. After that, we'll move up to our regular agenda. There are 3 items on tonight's regular agenda. The first item is a planning department item to consider accepting the dedication of right-of-way. The second is a presentation from the City of Eudora about a proposed rural housing incentive district. And then the third item is the Blackjack Battlefield Advisory Board charter. For each item, we'll hear from staff or an applicant, followed by questions from the Commission, and then open the item up for public comment relative to that item. Once public comment is closed, we'll bring the item back to the Commission for further discussion and vote. Lastly, recording of this meeting will be available on the county's YouTube page and website. With that, Commissioners, I'd ask if there's any item on the consent agenda you'd like to have removed for further discussion or questions.
Items 1.8, please.
1.8. Any others? And Commissioner Dorsey is online with us this evening. Good to see you, Commissioner Dorsey. Okay. Other than 1.8, I'd invite a motion on the other consent agenda items, Commissioners.
Could we ask the audience, the public?
We could. Thank you very much, Commissioner Willie. Is there any item on the consent agenda that a member of the public would like to have removed for further comment? Anyone online, Sarah? Okay. Now back to the Commission for a motion.
I move to approve consent agenda items 1.1 through 1.7 and 1.9.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Commissioner Dorsey. All those against? Thank you. Passes 5-0. Move on to consent agenda item 1.8, and I'll hand it over to Commissioner Anderson if she has questions.
I just have several questions on why we have such a large increase since we approved it in November for approximately 164,000. Have we actually launched the program?
Yes, the program launched at the end of November. At that point, Mental Health America was assuming the supportive housing services for strictly the flexible housing pool program at the end of November. They assumed those responsibilities in a transition with Bert Nash. What's happening now that's resulting in the increase of additional funding for that service agreement is that we're beginning in the new year, we are consolidating our supportive housing programs that were at one point flexible housing pool and our formerly HUD-funded permanent supportive housing program. We're both supported through a contract with Bert Nash Community Mental Health Center. So 2 parts. The decision was made to further consolidate supportive housing services all under the single provider, that being Mental Health America of the Heartland. So when you approved that initial service agreement for 2026, we didn't 100% have clarity about who was going to be continue to be the supportive housing provider for that HUD-funded permanent supportive housing program. But the determination was made that we should consolidate that all under Mental Health America of the Heartland and end the service agreement with Burt Nash to provide those services. The services and the program framework for that permanent supportive housing program and the flexible housing pool are exactly the same. So it led us to creating largely, it's a consolidated flexible housing pool program, but it's permanent supportive housing just with another name. So when that transition was made to consolidate all those services under Mental Health America of the Heartland, with that came the funding that previously was going to the Burt Nash Community Mental Health Center to manage master leases, utility budget, damage deposits, and then the supportive services that went into it. That's what was previously funded by the $321,000 from HUD. So I'll stop there.
I guess I would just add too that the change with Burt Nash was done in consultation with Burt Nash, and they were supportive of no longer providing those services.
Okay, thank you. So when we received the presentation from Mental Health America of the Heartland in November, we knew at that time that we were funding supportive services for personnel, mileage, and administrative overhead for $164,274. Since then, it sounds like the scope has changed, and we're now upwards of around $519,000, and the scope has changed significantly. I think we should definitely have another presentation from them to understand their capacity to do this work, since it has changed significantly, and we've also had an increase in funding. And I'm not sure that increase in funding and the amount of individuals that they're actually serving, how that actually balances out.
It's the same program model that they'd signed up for the flexible housing pool. The change, the additional scope is 12 additional households that are already housed. It's a transition of the client, of introducing the client and transitioning the master lease agreements. There's 12 master lease agreements that are in that, and the funding is in that budget increase for those master lease agreements. So they're absorbing that into their budget because those master leases are now going to be in Mental Health America of the Heartland's name, because that's what's worked for that permanent supportive housing grant previously. They are chronically homeless individuals, some of the hardest folks to house. So having the master lease agreements is really key to ensuring that. What I would also say about Mental Health America of the Heartland in terms of our confidence in their ability to do this. And we had a conversation about whether or not they're ready to scale to this level. They have the exact same level of programming in other parts of the state and across the state line as well. They know this population and they knew exactly what they were getting into. Now that aside, I know that they're working really hard to staff up right now, but I know that they've already hired at least one or two folks. And they're at all of our regional provider meetings. They're connecting, they're meeting with landlords, they're meeting with clients. They know how to do this. So the scope is largely reflective of those 12 additional units of housing that need to now be supportive. And so they're not broken apart into two different providers now.
And I guess I'd say, like, we can certainly have more conversations with Mental Health America on supportive housing as we move into the 2027 budget process. So we could certainly bring them back in at a later date and talk about how the programs are working. But it's important to remember that this was an already previously approved budgeted program, and all we're doing is continuing that service. It just was funded by HUD before, and then the commission included it in their 2026 budget for county funding.
So can I just ask a clarifying question, exactly on that? these were two programs, both of which were included in our budget for 2026. One of them in November, we already knew that Mental Health America and the Heartland was going to be covering, and the other one was kind of up in the air as we had conversations with Bert Nash, whether that fell under Bert Nash wanting to continue it or move it to Mental Health America of the Heartland, and that has then transpired in conversation with both of those groups. Would that be
Correct.
fair? Okay. So no new dollars are being
No new dollars.
allocated, just a change of partner on one of those pieces.
Right.
Okay.
And loss of HUD funding, which you were
Right.
aware of in July.
Except that in November, we approved $164,274 for personnel mileage, administrative overhead. And then now in January.
That was the Flex Pool program.
correct.
And then now we're going to consolidate the PSH project under that as well.
Correct. And I think that is a new budget request that we're seeing.
Now, it was
Um,
already approved. You approved it in July. You approved it in July, the permanent.
For
support-
Bert Nash,
No, you approved it just as the housing project.
just as a housing project.
Right.
Flexible housing
Correct.
pool.
Yeah, it was approved as the permanent supportive housing project in July. It wasn't approved by provider. That's not how we do it. We approve it by project type.
Correct. And now we have a request to approve it for a provider, correct? Which is, and the provider is MHAH.
Hmm.
And in November, at that time, I don't think that we were thinking that they were going to come before us in January with such a large ask
That it's
for
not
new
that-
funding.
Yeah, it's not their ask. I want to be very clear. This was our ask as in conversations with Bert Nash, and they're no longer able to provide this service. So we currently have people housed and we need to continue to support them. As Bert Nash is not able to support them, we need another manager in that place to help that support. They didn't, Mental Health America did not ask for this. We, as the supporters of the program, reached out to them knowing that we're in partnership with them. Does that help kind of clarify that? This is not a budget request from Mental Health America.
They're our contractor for the flexible housing pool.
And that will now be consolidated with the permanent supportive housing project. But
Okay.
we could certainly have them come in and talk about it if you want. If you want, I don't think we have any concerns with doing that, but I just want to be very clear with the public and with anyone's here. This is not new dollars. This was approved in the 2026 budget. And we've actually been doing the permanent supportive housing project for about 2 or 3 years now. So this is just a change in contractor.
I would like them to come in and talk about it simply because when we think about the amount of dollars that we're attributing to the increase in individuals, I just think that that's a very large increase.
Sure. I mean, I think we could have them come in, but the increase was what you budgeted for in July.
Commissioner Anderson, I'll just share my perspective and what I recall about the sort of chain of conversation. So going back to, the budget season and increasing the amount of dollars that we're allocating to the flexible housing pool and the permanent supportive housing project. That was an amount of money that, as was just explained by staff, was not specific to an organization. Historically, Bert Nash has been providing the services while we were also talking about an expansion of that program simultaneous to their organization's realization and communication to the county that being able to sustain the services within their organization was no longer a thing that was possible. And so fast forward to November when when the commission heard from and met mental health, I'm going to get the acronym mixed up, but our new provider that I recall from that conversation talking about how the decision had been come to about the one piece of the program that equaled that 164,000. And so we were ready to move. Everybody was ready to move forward with that. And that it was still a question mark about whether or not Bert Nash could or would have the capacity to continue being the provider for the other 12 households that Jill began describing earlier, which is representative of this consolidation, if you will, of the supportive housing program. So I think that to me, my understanding was that it was a conversation that was in progress always. And the consideration about the assessment about the new organization's ability and capacity to take on all the programming had been assessed from the beginning, but there hadn't been a decision point yet in November about whether Bert Nash was ready to say that they could no longer continue this program that is now being consolidated into the programs so that it's all one provider and there's continuity in that. And this agenda item is reflective of updating the service agreement to move all of those dollars to the single provider instead of bifurcating it to the two providers. So I mean, I think I hear your concern that maybe you're unsure about confidence in their capacity because we didn't question that or hear about it directly in the commission chambers in our meeting in November. But I do recall it being a part of the conversation that staff were in discussions with them and Bert Nash continuously about whether or not more services would be moved to them as a provider, and that would be something that would come back to us at a later date, which is what I understand this agenda item to be confirming now.
And we do have a representative from Mental Health America of the Heartland on the call if you have questions specifically or if you'd like to hear from them.
Well, and when I think about the service individuals that are going to be served. So when we talked in November, we had 164,000. We specifically talked about 22 households at that time. And so when we think about 519,000, and we've upped that a little bit. So now we're thinking about 432 households up to 45 individuals is what it states. That is a very large increase. And so when I think about that, right?
It's an existing service. So
Okay.
it's not an increase. It's an existing service.
And folks that are already housed, like that's,
Not an increase. We've been paying for this. We were just paying Bert Nash to do it. Now we're going to pay Mental Health America. So, I mean, you're right.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, you're right. It's an expensive program and we can certainly have more conversations about it, but it is not new money and it's not an increase.
Commissioner Dorsey, you had a question?
Yeah, the money flowing through the contract, that's not all personnel costs, that's also lease expense and other things.
Correct.
Did you hear that response, Commissioner Dorsey?
I didn't hear anything.
Yeah, Sarah said correct. To your question, she said correct.
Okay, I heard that. I had one other question on the contract attached to the agenda item. In one spot on the contract, other spot on the Schedule C, I believe it was, it says 519 or whatever the number was. Amounts don't agree.
Commissioner Dorsey, you're breaking up just a little bit for us, so we might ask you to repeat some things.
I attached the previous version of the service agreement that has the old number. I'm seeing that. That's a mistake on my part. The service agreement, I have a updated one in my files, but what I attached to the packet and oversight on my part is showing the.
So both
the
spaces should have
160.
the same number.
Yes, it should be 519, which the number that's in the overview.
Any other questions, Commissioner Dorsey?
I'm mute when I'm not talking so I can hear better.
Okay.
I think he
catch
turned
what-
off his video.
Oh, he turned off
could-
his video
that
so he could hear
better.
better. Okay. Any other questions, commissioners? Okay, we'll open this item up for public comment. Anyone here at the courthouse like to provide public comment on this item?
John Ems, 66049. This is off the cuff, so forgive me. But to Commissioner Anderson's point, I'm not sure this should be a consent item. Personally, I don't think it's all about the money, and I get that you're moving the furniture around the house and it was already there. I think it speaks to competency, and it's something we hadn't heard about. These are folks that are in a serious way. They've perhaps, according to what we've heard, the new partner has had this situation and worked with this population in other areas, but I don't think we've heard about it. And I think it would be great for the commissioners and the public to hear how they're going to go about working the new assignment. That's my opinion.
Any other public comment here at the courthouse? Anyone online, Sarah? Okay, back up to the commission for further discussion, more questions or motions.
Mr. Chair, Sarah had mentioned that we have someone from Mental Health America of the Heartland online. Can we just ask them to kind of speak to their capacity and their interest in this program?
Yeah, Sarah's going to move Simon Messmer.
He's already in the panel. Simon, you can come provide some comments on to response to the questions from the commission.
Oh, sure, happily. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Very good. Yeah, and I want to say that I am happy to come and meet with you all in person in a future meeting. But yeah, we definitely have done this work before. We do very, very similar work in Manhattan, Ottawa, and Emporia, also here in KCK and in Leavenworth, Kansas. I do want to point out that the change in the budget number largely reflects leasing costs and utility costs and things like that, expenses that were not in the original proposal or request that we made to you all. That's why there's sort of what looks like a disproportionate increase in terms of number of people served and the dollar amount. That's very much tied to leasing and utilities, which is not an expense that was covered in the previous version of this program.
Simon makes a good point too. I want to like the way that the flex pool has originally been structured. All of the leasing and utility payment funding, it's with the housing authority. This transition, the master leases are unique, and we want to maintain those. So what Simon says is really important. Like that's why it is disproportionate, and it's specific to the way that those 12 units have been set up, and we want to keep it that way. So the flex pool, a lot of the money sits with the housing authority because they administer that. But we made the decision in consultation with the housing authority and Bert Nash in making the transition that it made sense to continue the master leases, which mean that they would transition to mental health.
Simon, thank you.
Yeah, could I also say one more thing? One of the things that we're trying to get to is sort of a case ratio of about one dedicated staff person to 12 households or 15 people. That's a best practice. It's kind of an industry standard with folks like this. We've been meeting with both service providers and with the households, and yeah, these are folks with pretty profound needs. An interesting mix of mental health issues and substance abuse issues, and frankly, a lack of experience in taking care of themselves. And they're going to take quite a bit of hands-on attention in the home and in the community.
And Simon, can I ask why those costs were not in the original proposal?
It was a different project.
It was a different project with a smaller number of people. So we're adding staff to keep that ratio based on the new numbers. And again, the biggest disproportionate thing is tied to the leasing and the utilities, which is really just a pass through. That isn't coming to us, it's coming through us to landlords in the community.
How many staff are you adding to accommodate the individuals that you're serving?
So we will have 3 fully dedicated. So those will be folks that will only be working with these people in Lawrence. And then we've got, I don't know, maybe 0.4 FTE of background support. So I've got somebody who will be helping to supervise. Some of my time is in there. Some of our financial person's time is in there to help track and get these utility payments made in a timely manner.
And the individuals that will be supporting the individuals in Lawrence, will they be, when you say they'll be staffed, will they be housed in Lawrence? Will they be supporting individuals in Lawrence?
They will be housed in Lawrence and supporting only people in Lawrence. I don't want their attention going in any other direction than these families and individuals.
And when you say in Lawrence, do you mean Douglas County or Lawrence specific?
So if you're asking me about sort of physical plant or physical space, we are looking at doing some co-work space in downtown Lawrence on Vermont Street. That's not a done deal yet, but that's where we hope to have them housed. But yes, Lawrence.
I was going to, page 16 of this item in the packet breaks down the staffing for it and the different positions.
And just a clarification, maybe for Jill, probably, this program would be available to anyone in Douglas County. That's why the funding comes through us, it's not a Lawrence specific program. It's just if that's where the housing would be provided, but it kind of equal access to families in need that would fall into this program regardless of location within Douglas County, correct?
Correct. As long as and we all the referrals go through our coordinated entry system. That's like the first step.
Commissioner Anderson, do you have any other questions or things you want to discuss about this?
I still do have questions. I think it's still a large amount of money that we're allocating to this particular project. And it's a new provider for us.
I think we can certainly have them come in and have a more full presentation on the project if that's what the commission wants. I just want to be very clear here. This is money that you've had in your budget for several years. So it is not new. So I just don't want it to be perceived as that way. It is a new experience with this provider. So we certainly could have them come in and give a presentation similar to what they gave you in November, and just go into a little more detail if that's what the commission wants. I don't think that's a problem at all.
Yeah, I would suggest Commissioner Anderson or offer this as an option for, we as a commission during our budget process did allocate these dollars in 2026. There's been, for a variety of reasons, and sort of something that's been in progress for a while, a change in providers. And so I think it's certainly warranted before we get to the budget season, in 6 months from now, to hear how it's going before we review future budget requests for 2027 about either the continuation of the programming with them as a provider, or any expansion of or reduction of it otherwise. So, I would certainly support more time and opportunity to get to know this, new community partner, and having them come back to us for perhaps a work session sometime before budget, before we expect to see the 2027 iteration of what we approved for 2026. But given that these are dollars that we did approve allocating, and sometimes we change providers and how we change providers mid-year, or at the beginning of the year in this instance, due to circumstances that happen that weren't present when we originally, and again, to Sarah's point, in this instance, we are funding project and programs. It's just that historically, those services have been provided by a provider that this year has stated they no longer can, and therefore we have a new provider. But I think it's valid to want to have more time to get to know them before we continue the conversation about 2027 funds. But I would support moving forward with this agenda item as is, so that there's no disruption in services for clients that are already happening in our community.
That was going to be my question, is if we don't approve this service agreement tonight, what are the ramifications of that?
We have the existing agreement in place already for the original amount. I think we just, the closer, we just have to come back and with the assurance that, and give, because they're hiring staff, they're signing those lease agreements. Some of those master leases have already run out and they're on an extension, and their Mental Health America is working to make that transition real quickly. So we're just putting them in a pinch in some ways, but we have some room, some wiggle room.
And the type of work they're doing, we talked about that in November. This is nothing different than what we sort of asked questions about in November. It's just more of it. Is that correct?
Plus the master leases.
Plus the master leases.
Yeah. And I get it's confusing because it's, it was two separate programs. One was grant funded. They both were administered by Bert Nash. Bert Nash is no longer administering both of them. Commission put local dollars in opposite of the HUD grant, and then we've combined it. There's a lot going on. So I do get that. And I think we could do a better job of spelling that out. But moving forward, these will be a consolidated program and with just some master leases on some of these. So I do get that we probably smushed a lot in.
And having it on the consent agenda, I think it should have probably not been on the consent agenda.
Well, and we can talk about that at a future date, commissioners, as to my recommendation. Commissioner always has the ability to pull things off the consent agenda. In my view, this was an existing budgeted program with an existing budgeted service provider. And so we do that all the time around here. And so as Commissioner Reed said, we change providers, we change budget agreements. They don't all come back to you. If you did, you would do nothing but talk about service agreements all day long. So from my view, that's the reason why I put it on consent was it was an existing budgeted program and it's an existing provider in our community.
I would be glad to set up a work session, between now and budget to just hear more from Mental Health America of the Heartland, and you can dig in on with questions on the program and where it's been and where it's going and all of that. I'm comfortable moving forward with this. I don't want to see any interruption in service, and I want to make sure that we are also a good partner to our partners. But I think there were a lot of pieces in this that took some time to unpack, and I think we can continue to, dig in and learn more about the program, but I'm comfortable with the dollars that have already been set aside and moving forward this evening.
Commissioner Dorsey, I want to check in with you. If you have any questions or comments you want to make?
I have a question, if you can hear me.
Yeah, we
I
can
have
hear
a
you.
question. Gene Dorsey here. Jill, is this total amount of money basically the 600,000 we approved for supportive housing and 321, which was a HUD grant?
Yes. And for this year, the total budget includes $11,000 in carryover from 2025 that the Housing Authority already had on hand, that is helping us just like a little bit of wiggle room with this transition year. But moving forward, the budget for the flexible housing pool program will be $921,000, which is that 600 and plus the 321.
Thank you.
So if we do have flexibility, I am more comfortable in waiting and hearing from Mental Health America before we approve this change in scope and the additional dollars if we have flexibility. So that's where I stand.
Commissioner Anderson, do you want to make a motion to that effect?
Which would be deferring it. I recommend deferring the county administrator. I recommend deferring signing the 2026 service agreement addendum for $519,552 with Mental Health America of the Heartland.
A second. Doesn't look like we have a second. Make a motion to authorize the county administrator.
I cut out
Oh.
here and I couldn't hear the motion.
You didn't hear the motion? Okay.
Do that one more time. I recommend we defer the county administrators signing the 2026 service agreement addendum for $519,000 and $552 with Mental Health America of the Heartland.
Did you hear that, Commissioner Dorsey?
It was kind of cut out. I have a horrible connection here.
I don't think we have a second here at the courthouse. If you would like to second that. But we need to make sure you understand what motion you're seconding.
I'm requesting to defer this motion. I'm requesting to defer this motion. If you agree, you can second it.
Did you want to put in a date?
I would need to talk to Mental Health America before I could schedule a date for the presentation.
It's open-ended at this time.
Commissioner Dorsey? Okay. I'm going to make a motion to authorize the county administrator to sign the 2026
Yeah.
service. Oh. Yes, Commissioner Dorsey? Could you continue with my motion to sign the 2026 service agreement addendum for 519-552 with Mental Health of America of the Heartland and provide a work session in the future prior to budget to give us a status on the work they're doing and provide an opportunity for commission to have discussion with that provider before approving our 2027 budget.
I will second that motion. This is Commissioner Reed.
Moved and seconded. Any other questions? Any further comments?
Can you repeat your motion?
I'll try. So my motion was to authorize the county administrator to sign the 2026 service agreement addendum for 519-552 with Mental Health of America of the Heartland and schedule a work session with the county commission prior to our July budget hearing to review with the provider progress to date and give the commission the opportunity to ask questions about the services they provide.
Second.
I think that's what I said, or very close to it. Moved and seconded. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor
Can you
signify.
hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
My only comment would be the amount of money we're spending in that area for only 45 people works out to about 21,000 a year per. How long that's sustainable with rents continuing to increase and so forth. So I think it's very important we discuss this more thoroughly before the budget cycle.
We got most of that, Commissioner Dorsey, I think. Yes. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Passes 4-1. All right. We'll move on to our general public comment. If you would like to provide general public comment to the commission, we ask you to come forward and do so at this time.
John M. 66049. This I did prepare for. It's a new year. Happy New Year. I'm going to be lobbying to publish homeless population recovery outcome data to the public, not just to me, but to the public, which enables homeless program visibility and accountability. I think we all agree the goal is reduction of homelessness to functional zero. However, simply publishing demographics over time and providing housing is not enough. Outcome statistics are needed for each population type to validate accountability. By population of each type, I mean domestic violence survivors, foster youth aging out, substance use disorder, physically disabled, severe persistent mental illness, disabilities, et cetera. Those are our types of population in the homeless program. Delivery of support services should provide data illustrating improvement paths for each type of those populations. Each of those targeted populations require affordable rents, trauma-informed management, and coordination of the necessary supportive services. I think we all know that, but it's not being reported up the line at a population level. Behavioral health accountability would include what wraparound services have each of the homeless populations been engaged with, whether that's counseling, addiction treatments, job training. How successful have those services been? How many become independent and rejoin what we would consider to be healthy civilian life? Burton Nash actually published a form of this type of analysis in 2024. It remains incomplete, but it's still out there and viewable. A success goal for the program is to become less dependent on the taxpayer, overcoming drug dependency, healing domestic violence injuries, etc. Posting this data on the county dashboard would enable public appreciation of the homeless program's success and challenges. An incomplete picture of the groups experiencing homelessness is a barrier to implementing effective interventions and measuring success. Thank you.
Any other public comment here at the courthouse? Anyone online, Sarah? Okay, we'll close public comment. Move to our regular agenda item, and the first is a planning department item to consider accepting dedication of right-of-way associated with final plat 250023 on the southeast corner of East 900 Road and North 1800 Road, County Route 438.
Commission, I'll just kind of kick us off. Ellie will kind of walk through the plating process here. Just a little bit of continuity. This plat is coming to you today as a result of a rezoning application that came through back in early 2025. There was a light industrial rezone that was approved both by the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners. Preliminary plat was also approved alongside of this, so it in effect split this larger parcel with the zoning type, and now this subdividing of the land is the basis of tonight's approval. There is specifically some right-of-way dedication as part of this. So again, Ellie can kind of walk us through the specifics of that.
Thanks, Sean. And Ellie, I think this may be your first time here with the County Commission. Well, welcome. Don't forget to press the button on the microphone. It'll turn green and then we can hear you.
Oh,
Yes.
perfect.
Great.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yes. First time here. Good evening, Commissioners. Ellie Mullins, City of Lawrence Douglas County Planner. So this first item on the regular agenda is acceptance of road right-of-way in association with a land division. So this is part of the subdivision process, and in this context, that just means dividing land into developable lots and doesn't necessarily correspond with a new neighborhood or housing subdivision. In this specific case, it is related to a single commercial development. The associated division is a major subdivision under our regulations, and it's reviewed against the city-county subdivision regulations. So the major subdivision process is split into two application processes, the preliminary plat and the final plat. The preliminary plat was approved by the Planning Commission in August this year. And then the second step was the final plat, and those can be approved administratively if they're in compliance with that approved preliminary plat. So that was approved by staff pending conditions, conditions of approval on December 10th of 2025. So as part of this process, any road right-of-way that hasn't been dedicated shall be dedicated and accepted by the governing body. So that's tonight's item. So just a little background here. In the green, you can see the existing parcel. And so this division is just to split off that east half to be its own lot. And here you can see that plat drawing. So the new lot would be the area in blue, and then the proposed right-of-way dedication is shown in orange there. As we were discussing earlier, the proposed division is to accommodate a landscape business on a single 18.5 acre lot. The commission approved a rezoning of this property to the light industrial district. I have a typo there, I think. Or no, I just put LI. But the light industrial district back in April to accommodate that business. The light industrial district does not permit any residential uses, and it allows a variety of commercial and industrial uses. Eventually, when a site plan comes through for the development, it'll come to the commission for approval. So tonight's action is to accept the road right-of-way dedication in association with the division. North 1800 Road is currently covered by a roadway easement in this location, and it operates like a regular road. However, the subdivision process is the time to formally designate this area as road right-of-way. The proposed right-of-way to be dedicated matches the existing roadway easement width and meets those minimum width requirements for the road classification. So the dedication requires acceptance by the applicable governing body. That would be the Board of County Commissioners tonight. So that is your action to accept the road right-of-way dedication associated with Plat -25-0023 for Bennett's First Subdivision. I'm happy to answer any questions right now or come back up.
Thanks, Ellie. Commissioners, any questions on this item?
I have a question for Ellie before you get out of your
Yeah.
program there. Can you back up to the map that showed the property boundaries?
Or the map.
I think either one will do. So in terms of that'll work. The road right of way, it has a delay. The road right of way that exists now versus the
Mhm.
road right of way that's being dedicated. What's the change there?
So currently it is a roadway easement instead of formal road right-of-way. So it's just dedicating that formal right-of-way, and it'll become part of the county's right-of-way.
So within that process, there's no changing in the boundary of what that property is.
No, that area would still behave as a road, and measurements would be
So just
taken in the same way. Yeah.
From an easement to a right of way,
Yeah.
just kind of maturing that designation. Would that be right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So there's no actual, land ownership changing hands in terms of the within this property boundary.
But the ownership line will change, or I guess I am not the expert on the difference between easement and right-of-way as far as ownership.
And I can also, Chad Boyd's also on the call too, so I don't know if we want to elevate him to speak, but what I can say is the easement is still recorded. This is just, again, formalizing that a little bit more. So, for the purposes of development, it's understood where that lot line is. So there is a little bit of a change that occurs there. But again, I'll if there's, specific questions to that, I think Chad would be a great person to ask.
I think I'm close enough, but thank you.
So if Chad is on the line, can we have him confirm if there's going to be any ownership changes?
Stop sharing at this point so he can
kind of be seen on the mic. Chad, you're in the panel and you can provide comment.
Okay, great. I'm fighting a cold, so I hope you can hear me okay. So in the county, all of our roads originally were road records that were filed along section lines and other places. And when that happened, those were all structured as easements. And so the underlying landowner owns to the section line, but then the county has the right to put roadway in that easement. And that's kind of the rural approach. In the city, you won't find that because everything's platted. When right-of-way is platted through this process that we're looking at tonight, it actually becomes county property. In the case of the city, it becomes city property. And so the key place you can see that is on the plat. There's a legal description on the left-hand side of the page that gives the acreage of the original parcel, and that was all owned by the landowner. And then when you look at lot 1, it's a smaller acreage. And so the landowner actually does own less ground at the end of this process. And the piece that is shown at the top is county property where a plat has been done. Functionally, there's no change to this. So it's really just a matter of matching what this landowner is going to have on their deed with what we're creating. So there's no change in the road right away. The reason, I think there was a question about the widths and why does it jog? I looked at the road plans and those occurred between 1966 and 1976. And those jogs are all related to the embankment of the roadway that had to be graded. In all cases, this right-of-way exceeds the standard that's required in the subdivision regs. And so what we said was, well, we don't want to lose that, so we will simply match what's already there and plat that as right-of-way. So it's a little bit academic. There's no change to anyone except the landowner on their deed.
And is there only one landowner? Because on the survey, I'm seeing Castle Rock LC and then Holcamp Holdings LLC.
I think the parcel is being split and excuse me, it's the piece that's being platted is going to be one landowner. The piece that remains of the original parcel is probably the other landowner. I may be incorrect on that. Ellie may know.
Yeah. I'm looking at the plat drawing. Are you looking online on the property records?
No, I'm looking at what was submitted to the commission.
The lot that's being proposed will have one owner. What's remaining, I'm not sure what the ownership will be on that portion, but that part won't be platted. So the part that's being platted will have one owner, and the right-of-way corresponding with it is coming from that one owner.
Okay, so then 18.5 acres, and then we'll have 40 acres, right?
Sorry, could you say that again?
So there'll be 18.5 acres and then 40 acres, correct?
There will be the 18.5 acres and then the remaining portion of that parcel. And I'm not sure on the exact acreage on that, but yes.
Okay, so there will be two different owners. Is that what we're saying for both platted?
We don't know that for sure.
Yeah, and to be clear, so this entire area prior to this subdivision was 40 acres. So there's going to be about 18.9 acres roughly. That is the 18.6, which is the subject of this subdivision. So the area to the right or to the east is lot 1, and that would be the 18. So the balance of the 40 is on the other side. There you go. Quick math.
21.8.
This might also be a little academic, but so we had the parcel, it was split, and then the portion of it, which we're calling lot 1, is what's being platted and where we're getting the right-of-way acceptance. The other side of it is not being platted. Is that correct?
Correct.
It's not part of that plat. So it's just the one parcel that of those two that falls into the plat.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes. Any other questions for me?
So then which one is becoming the first Bennett subdivision?
The east, that 18 and a half lot, 18 and a half acre lot. That'll be on the east there. That'll be Bennett's first subdivision. It'll just be one lot.
Okay. And that lot is going to become the landscape business.
Correct. If that's what they move forward with. Right now, we don't have a development application, but that's what's been indicated for the property.
But that, again, that's been the intent of this process. Again, it started with sort of the rezoning part of it, and this is just a continuing of that. Is now we're formalizing where the rezoning occurred, which is this 19.6, and then we're removing about a little over 1 acre for the right of way, which is what the existing easement is, and that gets us to that 18.6 lot 1 size. But again, I think Ellie mentioned this would come back as the development occurs there. It would come back as a site plan. So this would have additional review for any development that does occur there.
Haven't had, I don't even know if we've had another rezone this year. It's kind of, we may have had 1 or 2, but we don't have many. And so it's very common in a rezone process that you're going to see the same property and same project multiple times. Zach, city manager of Eudora, is shaking his head. That's actually unusual in the unincorporated area. For the most part, we have a conditional use permit and you see it once. So you will see that that's just a little bit different. And so, for new commissioners that maybe haven't seen several rezones and that have come back to us with plats, this is a little bit different of a process. So this is step 2, I think, in a 3 or 4 step process.
So for a final plat to be approved administratively, when you say that, does that mean that it comes back to the Board of County Commission?
No, it will go
No.
to staff, planning staff.
Again, the only reason this is coming before the Board of County Commissioners is because of this dedication of this right of way. So absent that, this plat would have been administratively approved after the preliminary plat was approved through the Planning Commission. So again, this is a little performative to the extent that we already have an easement. We just want to solidify the ownership, as we've talked about, and make it clear that, that area is in fact right of way.
But any site plan would come to us separately if there's any development on the property. We just haven't seen that yet. Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? Commissioner Dorsey, any questions? Okay.
I just have one more question. Have you seen the fire suppression plan?
Not yet. It's a condition for the plat to have, or the plat has a note on it that'll have to be established prior to any development being finalized.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
And I just want to clarify on that point that Ellie's done a great job of communicating with the fire chief for Consolidated Fire District about that requirement. I know there's been active conversations with the developer about what the requirements are. Rural Water District has been involved in this process as well. So planning and zoning staff, zoning codes. So again, that type of information will be somewhat informed by the site plan ultimately in terms of what needs to occur for any sort of fire suppression or similar.
Mr. Chair, with this, that reminds me of some ex parte communication I've had about this land, but it really has nothing to do with what's before us for a vote tonight. But I have had conversations with Rural Water District number 6 about kind of water availability for this property and overall. And that was a really interesting conversation. I think I'd reported on that in Commissioner Miscellaneous a couple of weeks ago, and also had conversation with the fire chief of CFD1 about the process of what he's looking at for fire suppression for this site and why, because it's a fairly new conversation for us for rural properties. So like I said, neither of those have any bearing really on right-of-way dedication, but I just wanted to throw it out there.
And I have had conversations with landowners.
Okay, if there's no more questions, we'll take public comment on this item. Thank you, Ellie. Is there anyone here at the courthouse who'd like to provide public comment? Anyone online, Sarah? Okay, back to the commission for any further questions, comments, and/or motions. There's no more questions. I'm happy to make a motion. I move that the Board of County Commissioners accept the dedication of the right-of-way associated with the final plat 250023 Bennett's First Subdivision located at the southeast corner of the intersection of East 900 Road and North 1800 Road, County Route 438.
Second.
Seconded. Any further comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Dorsey, did we hear your vote? Almost. Is that up? Means yes. Okay. Thumb up. Okay. Those opposed passes 5-0. Thank you, Ellie. Welcome to the County Commission. Appreciate your work. All right, we'll move on to the City of Eudora's presentation on a proposed rural housing incentive district, RHID, Holiday Wood. There's no action on this item. This is for information only.
Commissioner, I'll just turn this over to Zach Daniel, the city manager with Eudora. I do want to acknowledge you're going to hear about two projects. One was included in your packet, which is the Holiday Woods RHID. And another project that that Zach will present on is also an RHID, but this is Shadow Ridge North. Both are a combination of single family homes with some duplexes as well. So I'll let Zach go ahead and take it over.
Sure. And is there anything I need to do to pull up slides or? You. All right. Thank you, Sean, for that introduction. Thank you for the invite. Always very happy to appear before this body and let you know what's going on in Eudora. We've got a lot of development opportunities going on, a lot of projects in the works. So very grateful for the opportunity to share some of that going on in that part of the county. Just for a little bit of housekeeping, to do a little bit of recap on the RHID mechanism that we're talking about. So just to give you a brief summary of what this mechanism is, what RHID does is allows developers to develop previously undeveloped lot for residential purposes, capping the property tax collection at the value that it is right now. The incremental increase in those property taxes that are generated through the new development are then used as reimbursables for the developer for allowable public improvements. So it is not a new tax. It is not a tax abatement. What it is a redistribution of that tax to the developer for upfront costs that they have already paid for the public improvement and the installation of those public improvements, allowing those incremental increases to pay for their own public utilities and new infrastructure. The projects tonight, which I'll go into in some detail, are Holiday Woods, as well as Shadow Ridge North, which we've talked about a couple of times at this body before. So Shadow Ridge North will be kind of the third latest iteration of that project that the City Commission will consider this coming Monday. For Holiday Woods, a quick correction on this slide. The total acreage that we're talking about in the red lined area is actually 65 acres, not 129 acres. The rest of the data on there is accurate. What it is the project as conceptualized, 119 single-family houses, 49 duplex units, so a total of 98 duplex lots. Those duplex units were recently approved for rezoning with the intention of the developer to provide for maintenance-provided senior living facilities. So that was been stated within their rezoning application for that southern part of the area that you're seeing right there. What we've got in the 2025 property tax revenue that was pulled from the latest county data. So this is the dollar value of the property tax generation from this piece of land as it is currently assessed, currently undeveloped. Going forward, the taxing entities that are noted on this slide will continue to collect that amount, and the incremental increases that are generated by the development of these single family and duplex units will be used for reimbursing the developer for those allowable public improvement costs. The total project cost for all of the build out is at 17.7 million. That was estimated by the developer. The city of Eudora commissioned additional third-party economic and feasibility analysis on the data that the developer has provided. We received preliminary results of that, which more or less line up with the estimates that were included in the developer's statutory required feasibility analysis for this project. So in short, the increment that would be generated is enough to pay for the reimbursable cost that the developer is claiming. Another point on RHID, statutorily, they are allowed for up to 25 years and allows the developer to collect up to 100% of that incremental new property taxes that are generated. In this project and the next project we'll talk about, the term of the RHID is for 20 years, so not the full 25, and the increment that's collected is 75 versus 100%. So 25% of the new property tax generated through this new development will go to the taxing entities as any other project that move forward unsubsidized. Any questions on this project specifically?
Zach, thanks for your presentation. If the costs for the public infrastructure is less than the taxable, the income that comes in, does that difference go back to the developer or does it go to city and the county and the school district?
So that reimbursable piece of it is what's important. So they are reimbursed for the costs that they put in for the project. So if it's less and it pays off faster, then everybody's to the good. There is within the development agreements that will be considered ideally on Monday when the city commission completes its public hearing. We'll talk a little bit more about that cap on the reimbursable amount due to the developer. But to answer your question, again, this is a reimbursable program that kind of acts as its own incentive for the developer to keep moving, in that if they don't generate that kind of development, you don't generate any increases in the values, ergo they don't collect any reimbursed revenue from that.
Okay, thanks.
All right, moving on to the next project. Shadow Ridge North, as I've mentioned, we have talked about this and I've appeared in front of this body a couple of times before. The concept has shifted a little bit. Originally, the senior component, we're talking about the same developers here. The senior component that was included in the Holiday Woods project was initially conceptualized to be part of this project. It was moved to that area north of K10. The value of that being it's closer to our rec center, which has a pretty healthy senior participation. So having that closer to that facility was a bonus. For Shadow Ridge North, the current iteration of the project includes 146 single-family lots on the 42 acres that are noted. The property tax revenue for 2025 is noted right there. Again, all taxing entities will continue to collect that, and that cap or the increment that's generated over and above that will go back to the reimbursable costs for the public infrastructure. Total project cost for this project, $12.6 million, and the RHID term is identical to the last project at 20 years, capturing 75% of the increment.
Any questions, commissioners?
Maybe a little early in the process,
Sure.
but I'm just asking, do we have any idea about the price point of some of the homes that'll be offered through the program?
So the developer has to provide, essentially some insight into the pro forma and the economics around their project. Initially, the project has conceptualized the product is around that 350,000 mark. That's what they're basing their incremental growth on for their economic feasibility is on that 2025 value at being around 350,000.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dorsey, I want to check in with you. Any questions on this? Thumbs down can mean no. Thumbs up can be yes.
No, I'm familiar with this project. I've been to most of the city commission meetings in Eudora where it's been discussed. I don't really have any questions. Thanks.
Okay.
So as far as next step for both of these projects, January 12th is coming Monday. The City Commission will hold two public hearings for both of these projects. At the conclusion of those public hearings, Our group will consider an ordinance to formally establish both of those RHIDs. At the time that that ordinance is adopted, that kicks off the 30-day period for both the school district and Douglas County to review, request what other information that you might need in order to properly give some proper analysis to this, to determine if there's any adverse effects that the county might feel because of the creation of this district. Should there be adverse effects that are discovered, the county and the school district both have the ability to pass a resolution citing those adverse effects, which would essentially nullify the creation of the district. So as Commissioner Dorsey noted, he's been a pretty steady presence at our meetings and has been pretty kept well abreast of this project as it's moved forward. If any of you or any county staff have additional questions related to that now or after the public hearing on Monday, we'll certainly provide whatever information that you guys need.
Thanks, Zach. Commissioners, any more questions? I have a question for Sarah. Sarah, what does this mean for us here at the county? I mean, this is a lot of taxing districts and I'm excited about more housing development. We really have a supply problem there. So, but what does it mean for Douglas County?
Not to necessarily be a negative voice on projects like this, but these are extremely burdensome inside this building. Each of these tax bills have to be hand touched by multiple parties inside the courthouse and verified. There's no way to systematically put these together. The software, it just does not, because each one is so different. They constantly roll off. They have property changes. It's basically like a Neighborhood Revitalization Act project for each individual house and property in each of these RHIDs. So given that there'll be 3 now in Eudora.
This will be creation of the first 2.
Okay, first 2, and then there's 2 in Baldwin. And we anticipate that there could be some coming up in Lawrence because this legislation has been increased to allow it basically to go into any city. I mean, they're pretty time consuming. From what I understand, no counties in Kansas charge a fee yet for the administration of RHIDs yet. I don't know that we're there yet on this conversation. We do have a fee for Neighborhood Revitalization Act projects, but it's NRAs. Yeah, did I say that wrong? Okay, sorry. NRA projects, but that's they are pretty time consuming and difficult to manage inside this building. But we respect the right of trying to encourage this kind of development and growth and in the community, and we'll just do our best to try to make sure that they get tracked. But this is why communication with us and final details, final plans, final signed documents are extremely important to us because they have to be shared in multiple places and managed throughout this building. And we all meet very regularly to discuss that.
I would reiterate how much we appreciate coming forward, in a timely manner and telling us about this. And we have kind of gotten to that point with all of our cities, I think over the last couple of years, is making sure that we're not the last to know.
Sure.
So I appreciate just that communication piece of it. And, there are considerations beyond just the tax abatement part, but which I understand, it's just the increment that's being managed there, but because of the management piece of it for our county staff. But Eudora's done a great job in caring about housing and moving housing projects forward and providing housing at a decent price point. So really appreciate the knowledge that's what's coming forward.
Thank you for that. And to Sarah's point, we certainly can appreciate the administrative lift that these projects are involved with. You get buried in paperwork and pretty much all of these kind of projects. So in as much as there's additional conversations about how do we address that responsibility and the costs associated with that, we'd certainly be willing participants in that conversation.
And I'll make a comment now, even though we haven't taken public comment, but we will be incurring as a county unlike some of the other tax TIFs that we've seen, this is 75%. So there's a 25% tax return on that. So it may just be up to the commission to talk about how to allocate some dollars to help with that process.
Yeah, I'm always glad to see when we're not talking about 100%, we're talking about something where we, as a community, are capturing some of these dollars along the timeline and not just at the 20-year mark. But I think this will be a long-term asset for Eudora and for the county.
And to put a little, bit of a finer point, a dollar value on some of that increment and the assessed value that we're talking about for Holiday Woods is an example. Current assessed value for that entire area is about 45,000. At full build out as proposed, we're looking closer to 15 million. So, the increment is not insubstantial in that respect.
And that might be a piece of information, if you can communicate that back to us, like what that increment looks like for the county, the school district.
For sure.
city,
Mhm.
so that we have an understanding of that. And that helps us in our calculation in terms of like what the county is putting into it. And infrastructure costs that the developer incurs, that's a communication with the city. Infrastructure costs that the county incurs would be a medical response, which
For
will
sure.
be, at the need will be there before that 20-year mark. And so that just helps us kind of weigh those
Mhm.
dollars on our side too.
Yeah, certainly after we complete this review of the development agreement drafts and some of the financial feasibility analysis included within that, I think we can provide a finer point to staff about putting a dollar figure on some of that piece.
And I do just want to make a little bit of space that we do have a tax team that reviews these internally with the county. And this has been, as Sarah alluded to, a little bit of a conversation point about how do we treat RHIDs versus NRAs or IRBs or any of those things, and whether or not a fee is appropriate. So again, that's something that we are researching just in terms of what other communities do and how they address that particular issue. So there's probably more to come is why I'm bringing it up. So, but again, this is sort of an evolving program because this RHID was it 2 years ago, I think, change at the state level in terms of who can actually apply for this. So it is a very attractive program for a lot of different reasons.
All right, we'll take public comment on this item. Thank you, Zach. If we
You.
have further questions, we'll let you know. Is there anyone here at the courthouse who'd like to provide public comment on this item? Anyone online, Sarah? Okay, back to the commission. Commissioners, this is just an information only item. We've already provided some comments, but if you have further comments you'd like to provide, now would be a good time. Okay. Zach.
Director Dorsey just texted me that his signal's in and out, so
Oh.
it might be dropping in and out.
Okay. Zach, appreciate you being here and keeping us updated, and thanks for that. All right, we'll move on to our final regular agenda item, which is a Blackjack Battlefield Advisory Board charter. I see Caitlin's coming up to the podium.
Hey, good evening, commissioners. I'm Caitlin Amerlin, the Heritage Conservation Coordinator for Douglas County, and I'm excited to present to you all tonight the charter for the Blackjack Battlefield Advisory Board. So as you all are aware, Douglas County now jointly owns Blackjack Battlefield and Nature Park with Baldwin City. That transfer was finalized just before Thanksgiving, and we are now co-owners of a new park in Douglas County. There are 38 more acres of public land in Douglas County, which is really exciting. I could talk about that excitement all night. But the first step in that process of what comes next, now that the property ownership is secured, is developing this advisory board. That was outlined in the joint ownership agreement that was agreed to when the purchase agreement was also agreed to. So the advisory board is really the first step toward building what that short-term and long-term vision for the property is. So this will be a jointly appointed advisory board, 3 members from Baldwin City, which have actually already been appointed, and 3 members appointed by you all here at Douglas County, plus a 7th member, an ex officio member that we thought would be appropriate, the executive director of the Douglas County Historical Society, to really round out a 7-member advisory board. This advisory board will be short-term in nature. The advisory board as proposed will be dissolved once their final report that will be be shared with both governing bodies is finalized. I'd suspect that maybe one of the recommendations will be to establish a permanent advisory board, but for right now, we've established the charter just to be the short term, maybe better described as a task force or startup committee of sorts. But yeah, so that's all laid forward there in the charter. Just as further context, staff has been working with Baldwin City to kind of establish that baseline sort of maintenance and what we do now while the advisory board gets going as we do our outreach and engagement. So really our primary goal right now for the site is just stabilizing the property. So we'll be kind of continuing as normal, not doing anything too crazy for the time being before we have that strategic vision in place. Baldwin City will be responsible for the day-to-day site maintenance, responding to any urgent or emergent concerns there. And Douglas County staff will be providing that administrative support for the advisory board and the strategic kind of visioning that comes next. So that's kind of the lay of the land so far. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Yeah.
A quick question. What's the anticipated timeline from standing up this task force or advisory board until that final report?
Yeah, so we hope to get the advisory board up and going as soon as it's approved. We'll have applications open soon and hopefully work with the commissioner to vet those candidates and then bring those appointments forward. So hopefully we'll get started in the spring sooner than later. And then I would venture to guess, hopefully about a year. You never know. I would hope to, again, have those initial recommendations, hopefully by the end of the year, but things take time. We'd also love to have that benchmark in between for budget, looking at budget for 2027, hopefully have some initial recommendations to help continue to stand this project up. So we'd hope to have some things to consider for budget in 2027. But the full report, I think, would take about a year.
I had also kind of a comment. I saw your list of personal or professional experience related to one of these topics. And I thought of a couple others to just kind of throw out there. And I recognize that Baldwin's already getting started on this, but maybe it's more for, the commission's consideration would be youth programming. So I think there has been kind of off and on some really fun youth programming that's happened at that site in terms of reenactments around the battlefield. So somebody that had an understanding of potential for that also would interest me anyway. We'll see if others agree.
Commissioner Willie, would that fall under that final bullet of technical skills and experiments that may be valuable?
Other technical skills. So yeah, I would say that, specifically that's the one that kind of stood out to me as something I'd like to see captured kind of early on in the thought process.
Yeah, that's a wonderful point. And so because we're limited to just 7 members here, we already have a narrow bucket. So I'm assuming there are going to be a lot of ad hoc committee type, different spaces where folks can lean into, because we will not capture all that the site has to offer in just, 6 people. The site is wonderful in that way, in that it leans to a lot of different fields of expertise. So yes, but that's a wonderful point to keep in mind.
So to that point, Caitlin, what happens if recommendations do extend beyond the initial dissolution of this particular group? I know you mentioned there might be an advisory, right, that is created after this particular charter.
Yeah, I think that'd be part of this process, is identifying what is needed. So right now, we're kind of, we do own parks currently, but not in the current setup, not in this sort of space that is really welcoming to a lot of different types of things. So I think part of this process is identifying what is needed. And so if an advisory board is needed, then that would be part of the recommendations there, and that would be brought forward to both governing bodies to consider what comes next. And that's kind of what's special about this is working both with Baldwin City and Douglas County.
And I do just, going back to how we arrived to where we're at today, this is coming on the heels of the open space plan, first and foremost, from the county standpoint, but also just the conservation heritage work that we've been involved in at Blackjack. So I would fully anticipate that there's going to be recommendations that certainly extend beyond just sort of this initial scope. This is meant to, and Caitlin said it really well, is to stabilize how we're approaching this, knowing that this is a unique relationship from a public partnership, a different triple P there. But again, this is meant to really kind of hone in on some specific goals and then try to deviate from there. So I'd almost kind of look at it as a steering committee in some respects to ultimately get us to a point where we can start to go into what does Blackjack mean to the greater ecosystem of our open space planning, our parks planning, and so on and so forth, so that that we can really take a look holistically at our at all of our assets.
It's a really great jumping off point to really actualize some of the conversations we've been having with open space. So it's a great opportunity to practice some of the goals we've already set forward, and then perhaps could take other places moving forward.
Thank you for the work on the charter.
Any other questions, commissioners, before we open it up for public comment? Okay. Just checking in with Commissioner Dorsey there. Okay. Anyone here like to provide public comment on this item? Anyone online, Sarah? Okay, we'll close public comment on this item and come back to the commission. Questions, discussion?
I do want to add, commissioners, so I know our communications coordinator is working on a press release to announce that we will be soliciting applications for this. We will be putting it on our county website along with all the other boards and commissions that we solicit volunteers for. So I'm always putting a plug in for folks to check that out. So we will schedule that timing once we're able to get that up and live on the website.
And I do just want to make and emphasize one point that we do want to ensure is there is a lot of folks that are interested in being part of this. I think we can all acknowledge that. So as part of sort of that screening process, we would welcome a commissioner or two to be part of that. So ultimately, these are recommendations that would come to you as a full body to make the appointments. But again, if there's any reflection on that, we'd certainly welcome that feedback, and ultimately if there's somebody or a couple people that want to be part of that, we'd love to talk about that.
I would love to be in on that conversation if possible.
I would think Commissioner Anderson would, yeah.
Yes, would
There's
as
our
well.
two, yeah.
Yeah. I'm happy to make a motion if we're ready. Okay. Recommend we approve the Blackjack Advisory Board charter and authorize staff to solicit applications from community members for the county appointments to the advisory board.
Second.
Moved in second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, Caitlin. Nice work. All right. That ends our regular agenda. We'll move on to appointments. I don't believe we have any appointments this week. Checking in with commissioners. No hiding out. And we'll go on to miscellaneous and start with Sarah's memo.
Commissioners, my first weekly memo of 2026 is attached to the packet. This Friday is the annual Legislative Priorities Breakfast sponsored by the Chamber at Maselli's. I think we have several staff members attending, and Commissioner Kelly will be presenting on our behalf, I believe. And then I also wanted to point your attention to some information items in the packet. I asked EMS Division Chief John Darling to kind of put together a 2025 highlights of countywide EMS collaboration, and I think he did a really good job of it. So you might want to, I'm proud of the work that we're trying to do in this space to work more collaboratively. So please check that out. You also have the Heritage Conservation Council's 2025 annual report. Also, in conversations we've had around tenant right to counsel and housing affordability and housing suitability. We have a recently issued report from the City of Lawrence Planning and Development Services Division. That's a report on their rental licensing program inspection data. So that's also just a really great piece of information for commissioners to have. Next week, we will have a work session, our first work session of 2026 on an update on the Consolidated Fire District 1 strategic plan. And we are planning items for the rest of the month. Commissioners, that's all I have.
Thank you, Sarah. I would like to highlight, it was in the consent agenda, but I was pretty excited to see those non-emergency transfers finally come to fruition. That's taken a long time. And as I glanced through some of John's information, we're making progress here, folks. We're trying to get that cost down. So I really appreciate that. I do want to take a moment and recognize what happened Monday at City Hall. I know that's been, it was very scary for staff there and has impacted our community greatly. And it also hit here at the county. And I appreciate Sarah's work and your whole team's work on responding to that, because I think that very unfortunate and very troubling. But this is the world that we live in. And so grateful to Sarah and her team. And we're thinking of our colleagues over at the city. I reached out to some city commissioners earlier this week just to see if there was anything that we could do. There was some talk about some things we might do, but I think they eventually decided that they didn't need our assistance at this time. So we're thinking of them and understand that that was very upsetting. Any other miscellaneous items, commissioners? Okay, with that, we are adjourned.